On a rainy Wednesday night, 3 gunshots shattered everything. A man stumbled into the light of her cart, expensive suit soaked in blood, intricate tattoos covering his throat, a chest wound that was killing him with every breath. Most people would have run, called 911 from a distance, protected themselves. Amara Chen made a different choice. She pressed her hoodie against his wound. She stayed with him while he bled out on the pavement, whispering words in Korean she couldn't understand. She didn't leave until the paramedics arrived. Then she slipped away into the night, because getting involved with obvious gang violence meant questions she couldn't afford to answer. What Amara didn't know was that the man she saved wasn't just anyone. He was Jin-Woo Park, the Korean Mafia boss who controlled half of Atlanta's underworld. And when he woke up in that hospital room, surrounded by men with guns and loyalty bought in blood, he asked one question: who saved my life? 5 days later, Jin-Woo showed up at her cart with $10,000 in cash. Amara pushed it back across the counter and said, "I don't need payment for being a decent human being." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't, because in Jin-Woo's world, everyone wants something, everyone has a price, everyone plays the game. Amara was the first person in a decade who just wanted him to survive, and that made her the most dangerous thing in his life, because his enemies were watching, and they'd just figured out that the Korean mafia boss had a weakness, a woman with a hot dog cart who didn't even know what world she'd stepped into. The question isn't whether Amara saved Jin-Woo's life that night. The question is, did saving him destroy hers? If you believe in helping people regardless of who they are, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Let's see who's really about compassion over judgment. The rain had started an hour ago, turning the Fourth Ward's cracked pavement into a black mirror that reflected neon signs and passing headlights. Amara Chen adjusted the plastic sheeting over her hot dog cart, protecting the buns from the drizzle while the grill hissed and steamed beneath the overhang. "Extra onions, Marcus?" she called to the security guard approaching from the liquor store across the street. "You know it," Marcus grinned, his uniform jacket dark with rain. "You're the only thing that makes the night shift bearable." Amara handed him the foil-wrapped dog and accepted his crumpled bills. 2 years she'd been working this corner, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., 6 nights a week. Every dollar went into the mason jar hidden in her efficiency apartment. $18,000 so far. Nana's kitchen would be real someday. She could already see it. Warm lights, mismatched chairs, the smell of her grandmother's recipes filling a space that was finally hers. "You be safe out here," Marcus said, heading back to his post. Amara nodded, already wiping down the cart's metal surface. She knew the rhythm of these streets, when to engage, when to look away, when to pack up early because trouble was brewing. Tonight felt quiet, just rain, distant traffic, and the occasional customer seeking hot food and dry conversation. Then the gunshots cracked through the night, 3 sharp pops that sent Marcus diving behind a parked car. Amara's hand stilled on the towel. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't run. Not yet. She scanned the street, looking for the source, calculating whether she needed to abandon the cart or... A figure stumbled into the cone of light cast by her cart's fluorescent strip. The man wore an expensive suit, now ruined. Blood spread across his white dress shirt in a widening stain, dark and gleaming. Intricate tattoos covered his throat and disappeared beneath his collar, designs she didn't recognize, but understood meant something in a world she stayed far away from. His face was pale, lips pressed tight against pain, dark eyes unfocused. He took 2 more steps and collapsed against the wet pavement. Most people would run. Amara had about 3 seconds to make that choice, grab her cash box, leave the cart, disappear before the shooters came back or the police arrived with their questions. Instead, she vaulted over the cart's serving window. Hey, stay with me." She dropped to her knees beside him, rain immediately soaking through her jeans. Blood pooled around him, too much blood, and she could see the wound now, high on his chest, just below the collarbone. Her hands shook as she yanked off her gray hoodie, the one with the comfortable, worn softness she'd had for 5 years. She wadded it up and pressed it against the wound. The man gasped, his body jerking. I know it hurts, Amara said, pulling her phone from her pocket with her free hand. 911, I need an ambulance at the corner of Edgewood and Boulevard. Gunshot wound, chest. He's losing a lot of blood. The man's hand shot up, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His lips moved, forming words in a language she didn't understand. Korean, maybe? His eyes locked onto hers with desperate intensity, trying to communicate something urgent. I don't understand, Amara said, maintaining pressure on the wound even as her hoodie turned dark red. Just hold on, help is coming. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The man's grip on her wrist loosened, his eyes starting to flutter closed. No, stay with me. Look at me. Amara leaned closer, using her free hand to tap his face. You're not dying on this street. You hear me? Stay awake. The sirens screamed louder. Red and blue lights painted the wet pavement. Amara heard Marcus shouting, directing the paramedics, but she didn't move until the EMTs were right there beside her, taking over with practiced efficiency. Ma'am, you need to step back. He was trying to tell me something. In Korean, I think. He kept... Ma'am, the police will need a statement. Amara looked at the organized chaos, paramedics working, police securing the scene, Marcus pointing in her direction. She looked at her cart, standing abandoned in the rain. Then she looked at her hands, covered in a stranger's blood, and made a decision. She slipped into the crowd of gathering onlookers, then turned down an alley she knew like the back of her hand. By the time she reached her cart again, the ambulance was gone. So was the man. So were the police, mostly. And so was the cash from her cart's locked box, the lock jimmied open. Her tip jar lay overturned, empty. Amara stood in the rain, staring at the blood still visible on the pavement, despite the water trying to wash it away. She'd lost tonight's earnings, her favorite hoodie, and possibly her sanity. But the man was alive when the ambulance left. Decent people don't let people bleed out, she muttered to herself, beginning to pack up what remained. That's what Nana would say. She didn't know his name, didn't know he was Jin-Woo Park, didn't know that half of Atlanta's underworld feared him and the other half worked for him. She just knew she'd made a choice, and she'd have to live with whatever came next. Jin-Woo opened his eyes to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of monitors. His chest burned. Every breath felt like knives, but he was breathing, which meant someone had stopped him from bleeding out on that rain-soaked street. Boss. The voice came from his right. Min Jun, his second in command, leaned forward in the chair beside the hospital bed. The doctors say you're lucky. Another few minutes and... Who stopped the bleeding? Jin-Woo's voice came out rough, damaged. Min Jun hesitated. Witnesses say it was a street vendor. Black woman ran a hot dog cart on that corner. She called 911, kept pressure on the wound until paramedics arrived. Then she disappeared before police could get a statement. Jin-Woo processed this slowly through the haze of pain medication. Someone had saved his life. Someone who hadn't waited for payment, hadn't asked for protection, hadn't tried to leverage the moment. Someone who'd simply helped and walked away. Find her, Jin-Woo said. Boss, the shooters, we need to find her first. Jin-Woo's eyes closed again, but his mind was already working. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle, but this woman had wanted nothing except to keep him alive. That made her the most interesting person he'd encountered in a decade. Find her, he repeated. I want to know everything. 5 nights after the shooting, Jin-Woo Park appeared at Amara's cart like a ghost made flesh. She noticed him immediately. Impossible not to. He moved through the late-night foot traffic with the kind of presence that made people unconsciously step aside. The tailored black coat probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His face was still pale, and she could see the careful way he held himself, favoring his left side where the bullet had torn through. Amara's hands stilled on the onions she was chopping. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm, but she kept her expression neutral. This was her corner. She'd worked too hard to let anyone, expensive coat or not, make her feel like she didn't belong here. You're supposed to be resting, she said, not looking up. Chest wounds don't heal in 5 days. Jin-Woo stopped at her cart, something like surprise flickering across his features. You remember me. Hard to forget someone whose blood ruined my favorite hoodie. Amara finally met his eyes. They were dark, intense, and studying her with an unnerving focus. You need a hot dog or something else? Instead of answering, he placed a thick manila envelope on the cart's metal surface. It landed with the weight of something significant. Amara glanced at it, then back at him. She didn't touch it. "There's $10,000 in there," Jin-Woo said quietly, "for what you did." For a long moment, Amara just looked at him. Then she picked up the envelope with 2 fingers, held it out to him, and waited until he took it back.
"I don't need payment for being a decent human being," she said, returning to her onions. "You can go now." Jin-Woo stood there, the envelope hanging in his hand like a foreign object he didn't know what to do with. "You don't understand." "I understand fine. You feel like you owe me. You don't." Amara scooped the onions onto the grill, where they hissed and started to caramelize. "I did what anyone should do. You're alive. That's enough." "Your cart was vandalized. Let me replace it. A better model, proper equipment." "No." "A restaurant space, then. I know you're saving for something. I can—" "No." Amara's voice remained calm but firm. She finally stopped working and gave her full attention. "Look, I don't know who you are. Jin-Woo Park. I didn't ask." Amara crossed her arms. "And I don't need to know. What I need is for you to understand that I helped you because you were bleeding out on the pavement and I was there. That's it. No transaction, no debt, no strings." Jin-Woo's jaw tightened. In his world, everything had strings. Every favor came with interest. Every act of kindness had a price tag, even if it wasn't immediately visible. This woman's refusal to accept anything from him was so foreign it might as well have been a different language. "Then let me make sure nobody bothers your corner," he tried. "The vandalism, the theft. I can prevent that from happening again." "Can you?" Amara tilted her head. "Or will having your protection just paint a bigger target on my back? Make me that woman Jin-Woo Park looks after? Turn me into someone's leverage?" The accuracy of her assessment hit harder than the bullet had. Jin-Woo said nothing. "You want to thank me?" Amara's voice softened slightly, not with affection, but with something like pity. "Go home. Live your life. Appreciate that you're still breathing. That's enough. That's all I want from this." "Why?" The question came out rougher than he intended. "Why did you help me? You knew what I was, the tattoos, the suit, the obvious violence. You could have walked away." "Because you were bleeding and I was there." Amara said it like it was the simplest equation in the world. "It's not complicated." But it was complicated. Jin-Woo's entire existence was built on complexity, on leverage and calculation, on reading angles and anticipating moves 3 steps ahead. This woman had reduced everything to basic human decency, and it baffled him completely. He stood there for another moment, the envelope still in his hand, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years, the inability to solve a problem with money or power. "Everyone in my life wants something. Money, status, protection, opportunity. You're the first person in a decade who just wanted me to survive." Amara's expression shifted slightly. Not sympathy exactly, but acknowledgement. "That's sad," she said, "but it's not my problem to fix." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt oddly freeing. No manipulation, no hidden agenda, just honest truth delivered without malice. Jin-Woo nodded slowly, slipping the envelope back into his coat. "Thank you for saving my life." "You're welcome," Amara replied, already turning back to her grill. "Now, go rest. Doctor's orders." He left, but something had shifted. For the first time in years, Jin-Woo Park had encountered something he couldn't buy, couldn't control, and couldn't fully understand. And he found himself wanting to understand it more than anything else in his carefully constructed empire. Jin-Woo came back 3 nights later, not with money or offers, just himself, and a question about whether she always worked alone at this hour. Amara had rolled her eyes and told him she'd been fine for 2 years before meeting him, thank you very much. But he kept coming back. At first, the conversations were awkward, Jin-Woo standing stiffly by the cart while Amara worked, neither quite sure what they were doing. He'd ask a question, she'd answer while assembling hot dogs. Long silences stretched between them like suspicious cats circling each other. Then, slowly, a rhythm emerged. He learned she'd been raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. That Nana taught her to cook, real cooking, the kind that made a house smell like home. That every recipe Amara planned for her future restaurant came from grease-stained index cards written in her grandmother's careful handwriting. "Nana's kitchen," she said one night, wiping down the grill. "That's what I'm calling it. Nothing fancy, just good food, fair prices, and a place where people feel welcome. How much more do you need? Jin-Woo asked. Amara shot him a look. I'm not telling you that. I wasn't offering. Good. She learned almost nothing about him in return, not because he wouldn't talk, but because she refused to ask. When conversation drifted towards his work, his family, anything that might pull back the curtain on his world, Amara would redirect or simply change the subject. She didn't want to know what he did, who he hurt, what justified the expensive suits and the tattoos and the bullet wound she'd kept from killing him. She just knew he kept showing up, night after night, like a habit neither of them could quite break. Then Marcus pulled her aside one evening before Jin-Woo arrived. People are asking questions about you, Marcus said, his usual easy smile replaced with concern. About who you know, who comes around your cart. That man you've been talking to every night. Word is he's connected. Serious connected. People like that are bad news, Amara. I'm not involved in anything. Doesn't matter. Proximity is enough. Marcus glanced around, lowering his voice. I'm just saying, be careful. Women who get close to men like that, they either get used or get hurt. Sometimes both. When Jin-Woo appeared an hour later, Amara didn't smile. She didn't make small talk. She waited until he was close enough that her words wouldn't carry, then asked quietly, Are you putting me in danger just by being here? Jin-Woo went still. For a moment, she saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or calculation. Then he said, Possibly. My world is complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He met her eyes. I've been careful. My enemies don't know about you. Yet, Amara crossed her arms. Marcus says people are asking questions. If they're asking questions, that means I'm already on someone's radar, which means you need to stop coming here. I can protect you. I don't want your protection, Amara cut him off. I want my life to stay mine. Simple, safe, separate from whatever wars you're fighting. She turned away, started organizing supplies with sharp, angry movements. This was a mistake, all of it. I should have walked away that night. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. Thunder rumbled overhead. Within seconds, rain began falling in heavy sheets, turning the street into a blur of neon reflections. The few customers scattered for cover. Amara swore under her breath and started pulling tarps over her equipment. Jin-Woo moved to help without asking, his hands quick and efficient despite the healing wound. Between them, they covered the grill, secured the propane, locked down anything that could blow away. The rain soaked through both their clothes in minutes. I'm packing up early. This isn't worth it. Let me drive you home. I can take the bus. In this? Jin-Woo gestured at the torrential rain. Don't be stubborn. Amara wanted to refuse, should have refused, but cold water was running down her back and the nearest bus stop was 3 blocks away, and she was tired of fighting everything all the time. Fine, she muttered. His car was parked 2 blocks over, something sleek and black that probably cost more than her entire life savings. The interior smelled like leather and rain. Amara gave him her address and stared out the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. The efficiency apartment above the laundromat looked even more modest than usual when they pulled up. Amara hesitated, hand on the door handle. You don't have to. I walked you to your door, Jin-Woo said quietly. I'm not leaving you on the street. She let him follow her up the narrow exterior stairs, her key stuck in the lock like it always did. The door opened to reveal everything she owned in 400 square feet. A bed in one corner, a kitchenette in another, a small table with 2 mismatched chairs, and covering one entire wall, a vision board she'd made from magazine clippings and printed photos, restaurant interiors, menu designs, kitchen layouts, color schemes, every detail of the dream she was building dollar by dollar. Jin-Woo stood in her doorway, water dripping from his expensive coat onto her cheap linoleum, and stared at that wall. This is what you're working toward, he said softly. Not a question. Every night, Amara confirmed. Every tip, every hot dog, every hour standing in the cold. This is why. He looked at her small space, the organization, the cleanliness, the careful way she'd made something warm from almost nothing. Then he looked back at the vision board, at her future spelled out in glossy photographs and careful planning. You don't need my money, Jin-Woo said, and this time he finally understood. You've already built something real. Yeah, and I need it to stay real, which means staying far away from your world. If you believe everyone deserves to chase their dreams without becoming someone else's collateral damage, drop a like on this video and hit the subscribe button. Only people who think power justifies destroying innocent lives won't engage. Jin-Woo nodded slowly. He turned to leave, then stopped in the doorway. I've been careful, but you're right. Yet is a dangerous word. He left, and Amara locked the door behind him, listening to his footsteps descend the stairs. She stood there for a long moment, dripping rainwater onto her floor, staring at her vision board, and wondering why doing the right thing kept getting more complicated. It happened on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after the rain. Amara was opening her cart for the evening shift, unlocking the propane and checking her supplies, when two men materialized from the shadows between buildings. They moved with purpose. No hesitation, no conversation. Just hands grabbing her arms with bruising force. You're coming with us, one said, already dragging her toward a dark van idling at the curb. Just need to have a conversation. Amara's training from the self-defense class she'd taken years ago kicked in before thought could freeze her. Her hand found the pepper spray in her hoodie pocket. She twisted, aimed for the nearest face, and pressed down hard. The man screamed, releasing her arm to claw at his eyes. The second man tightened his grip, trying to lift her off her feet. Amara drove her heel down on his instep, then kicked backward with everything she had. Something in his knee made a sound like a branch snapping. He went down hard, cursing in Korean. Amara ran, not toward the van, but toward the street, toward light and witnesses, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Help! Somebody help me!" The men didn't follow. She heard the van's tires squeal, heard Marcus shouting from his post across the street, heard her own heartbeat thundering in her ears louder than any sound in the city. By the time the police arrived, she was sitting on the curb, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She called Jin-Woo from the police station 2 hours later, her voice cold and flat. You need to come here, now. He arrived within 20 minutes, a lawyer in an equally expensive suit trailing behind him. The lawyer handled the police, statements, assurances, cards exchanged. Jin-Woo stood near the door, his face carefully blank, watching Amara refuse a blanket an officer offered her. When they finally released her, Amara walked straight past him and out to the parking lot. Jin-Woo followed, dismissing the lawyer with a gesture. Amara. She turned on him so fast, he actually stepped back. You said I was safe. You said they didn't know. I saved your life and now mine is ruined because of it. I was careful. Not careful enough. Her voice cracked. 2 men just tried to kidnap me, Jin-Woo. They knew who I was. They knew where to find me. They were dragging me into a van to have a conversation, and we both know I wouldn't have survived that conversation. Jin-Woo's jaw tightened. Security footage from that night. My enemies must have tracked it down, seen me visiting your cart. They recognized that you... He stopped, searching for the right words. That I what? That I mattered to you? Amara laughed, sharp and bitter. I don't want to matter to you. I don't want to be the woman Jin-Woo Park protects, or your weakness, or your vulnerability. I want to sell hot dogs and save money and build my restaurant and live a normal life. But you took that from me. I can protect you, Jin-Woo said quietly. Safe houses, security, whatever you need. I don't want your protection. Don't you understand? Your protection is just another cage. Amara's hands were still shaking, adrenaline still coursing through her system. Those men came for me because of you, and now what? I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if the next person who approaches me is coming to have another conversation? I'll eliminate the threat. I have resources. And then what? Another threat emerges? Another enemy figures out you care about the hot dog vendor? She shook her head. This is your world, Jin-Woo. This is what proximity to you costs. I told you that night in the rain and you didn't listen. Jin-Woo stood very still, something breaking behind his eyes. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Amara's voice dropped, exhaustion replacing anger. The only way I'm safe is if I disappear. Away from you, away from Atlanta, away from this whole situation. I need to vanish so completely that targeting me stops being worth their time. Where will you go? I'm not telling you that. I met his eyes one last time. You don't owe me anything. We're even. I saved your life, you ruined mine. The scales are balanced. Don't look for me. Don't send people to check on me. Don't try to help. Just let me go. Amara, promise me. Her voice turned hard. Promise me you'll let me disappear. Jin-Woo wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he could make this right, that his resources could solve this problem like they solved every other problem. But looking at her face, at the fear she was trying so hard to mask with anger, at the future she'd built so carefully, now shattered, he finally understood. His gratitude had become a weapon pointed at her. His presence in her life hadn't honored her act of compassion. It had destroyed the very thing that made her who she was. She saved him because she was good, and being near him made that goodness dangerous. I promise, Jin-Woo said quietly. Amara nodded once, then turned and walked away. She didn't look back. Jin-Woo stood in the police station parking lot watching her disappear into the Atlanta night and felt something hollow out inside his chest. He'd spent years building an empire where he controlled everything, but the one thing that felt real, the one person who'd seen him as human rather than symbol, was walking away, and he had to let her go. Because loving someone, he realized too late, sometimes meant accepting that you were the worst thing that could happen to them. 6 months passed like a slow hemorrhage. Jin-Woo couldn't stop. His organization ran with its usual efficiency. The men who'd ordered the kidnapping attempt were dealt with, quietly, permanently. New territories opened up. Revenue streams multiplied. His second-in-command reported record profits at their weekly meetings, numbers that should have meant something. They meant nothing. Jin-Woo moved through his empire like a ghost haunting his own life. He attended meetings, made decisions, maintained the careful balance of power and fear that kept his world spinning.
But something fundamental had shifted the night Amara walked away from that police station parking lot. He'd learned an expensive lesson. You could own everything and still have nothing that matters. The hot dog cart on 4th Ward had a new vendor now, a middle-aged man who kept his head down and asked no questions. Jin-Woo had driven past it once, late at night, and felt the absence like a missing tooth his tongue kept finding. He didn't look for her. He'd promised. But he thought about her constantly, wondered if she was safe, if she'd found a new city, a new corner, a new dream. If she looked over her shoulder less often now, if she'd forgiven him for ruining the life she'd built so carefully. He doubted it. He hadn't forgiven himself. Min-jun noticed, of course. "You've been different," he said one evening, pouring expensive whiskey Jin-Woo wouldn't drink. "Since that night." "I'm fine." "You're empty. There's a difference." Jin-Woo didn't argue because it was true. The text came on a Saturday morning 6 months and 4 days after Amara had walked away. Unknown number, no name, just an address in Savannah, and a time. Saturday, 2 p.m., if you want to talk. Jin-Woo stared at his phone for a full minute, his heart doing something it hadn't done in months, beating with purpose. He didn't let himself hope. Hope was dangerous, but he canceled his afternoon meetings, got in his car, and drove. Savannah was 3.5 hours from Atlanta. He made it in 3. The address led him to a neighborhood that straddled the line between historic charm and working-class hustle. Tree-lined streets gave way to a small commercial block, and there, nestled between a used bookstore and a laundromat, was a cafe with a hand-painted sign, Nana's Kitchen. Jin-Woo sat in his car across the street for several minutes, just looking. The space was small, maybe 20 seats, but warm. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. Mismatched chairs surrounded wooden tables. Framed photographs covered one wall. And even from here, Jin-Woo could see they were old family photos, the kind that turned a restaurant into someone's story. And there, visible through the window, was Amara. She wore a yellow apron over jeans and a white t-shirt, her natural hair pulled back in a colorful wrap. She was laughing at something a customer said, her whole face lit up with genuine joy. As Jin-Woo watched, she delivered plates to a table, food that looked nothing like hot dogs but everything like home, and paused to chat with an elderly woman who patted her hand affectionately. She'd done it. Against everything, the violence, the fear, the upheaval of her entire life, she'd built her dream. Jin-Woo's chest tightened with something he couldn't name. Pride, maybe? Regret. Relief that she was alive and safe and thriving. Grief for the cost of that safety. He got out of the car slowly, checking his reflection in the window. He'd dressed down. Jeans, a simple black sweater, no visible signs of wealth or power. Just Jin-Woo. Just a man. The cafe's door had a small bell that chimed when he pushed it open. The smell hit him immediately. Spices and warmth, cornbread and slow-cooked greens, something sweet baking in the back. Music played softly from hidden speakers, something old and soulful. Amara looked up from the table she was clearing. Their eyes met across the small space. For a moment, neither moved. Jin-Woo saw her smile falter, saw her hands tighten briefly on the plates she held. Then she set them down, said something to the young woman working the counter, and gestured toward a corner table near the window. Jin-Woo walked over and sat down. His hands rested on the worn wooden table, and he noticed the small imperfections, the slight wobble, the water ring someone had forgotten to wipe up, the scratch marks for years of use. Real. Authentic. Hers. Amara approached with 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of him, and sat down across the table. "You came," she said quietly. "You asked me to. I wasn't sure you'd get the message, or that you'd keep your promise about not looking for me." "I kept it," Jin-Woo said, wrapping his hands around the coffee cup, grateful for something to hold. "Every day for 6 months, I kept it." Amara studied his face, and he let her look, let her see the exhaustion, the emptiness, whatever truth was written there. Finally, she said, "You look tired." "I am," Jin-Woo met her eyes. "You look happy." "I am." A small smile touched her lips. "Most days, anyway." The cafe's warmth surrounded them, other customers talking, silverware clinking, life happening normally around their small corner of careful reunion. Through the window, Savannah carried on, oblivious to the weight of this moment. "Tell me about it," Jin-Woo said softly. "Tell me about Nana's kitchen." And slowly, carefully, Amara began to talk. Amara talked about the journey, how she'd left Atlanta with $18,000 in savings and nothing else, how she'd found Savannah by closing her eyes and pointing at a map, because staying in Georgia felt right, but staying in Atlanta felt impossible. She rented the cheapest apartment she could find, worked 3 jobs for 4 months, then found this space when the previous tenant went bankrupt. Small business loan was harder to get than I expected. Turns out, former hot dog vendor with no credit history isn't exactly what banks dream about, but I found a local credit union willing to take a chance. Opened 2 months ago. Jin-Woo looked around the cafe again, seeing it with new understanding. Every detail had been chosen carefully, paid for with money she'd earned herself. The mismatched chairs came from estate sales. The photographs were her grandmother's family, creating history on the walls. The menu, visible on a chalkboard behind the counter, featured exactly the kind of food she'd described those nights by her cart, recipes that turned strangers into family. "It's perfect," he said quietly. "It's mine," Amara corrected. "That's what makes it perfect." The words hung between them, a reminder of everything that had happened. Jin-Woo set down his coffee cup and met her eyes directly. "I'm sorry," he said. "You saved my life, and I nearly destroyed yours. I thought gratitude meant repaying you, but all I did was make you a target. I'm sorry, Amara. Genuinely sorry." Amara was quiet for a moment, watching him. Then she nodded slowly. "I accept your apology, but I need you to understand something. I don't regret helping you that night. I regret that your world followed you to my corner. There's a difference. I know. Do you? She leaned forward slightly. Because for months, I was angry, furious at you for not staying away like I asked, furious at myself for not walking away from that bleeding man on the pavement. But then I realized I'd make the same choice again. I'd still help. That's who I am. I just wish it hadn't cost me everything I'd built. You rebuilt, Jin-Woo observed. I did. Somewhere nobody knows me. Somewhere your enemies won't think to look. Amara's expression softened slightly. I thought about you. Wondered if you were all right. If they'd tried again. If you'd... She stopped, shook her head. But I need you to understand something. I can't be part of your life in Atlanta. I can't be the person you visit, the one your enemies watch to find your weakness. I won't live like that. I understand. I don't think you do, Amara said firmly. I can't be in your world, Jin-Woo. Not in any way that matters. Not in any way that makes me visible. Jin-Woo was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup slowly. Then he said, what if I come here? Once every few months, no bodyguards, no business, no connections to my world. Just two people having coffee. You're not in my world. I'm visiting yours, on neutral ground. Amara studied him carefully. And if it feels unsafe, if I even suspect your world is bleeding into mine again? You say the word, and I disappear, permanently this time. Jin-Woo's voice was steady. I won't risk you again. But Amara, for 6 months, I've owned everything and had nothing. You're the only person who's ever seen me as just human. If there's a way to preserve that, even in small doses, even on your terms, I want to try. No showing up unannounced, no sending people to check on me, no gifts, no money, no interference in my life. Agreed. And the second it gets complicated, the second I feel like I'm being watched or followed or targeted, we're done. No negotiation. Understood. Amara sat back in her chair, considering. Through the window, Savannah carried on. People walking dogs, cars passing, life unfolding normally. Inside, the cafe hummed with quiet conversation and the smell of good food. This was her world, built from nothing, precious because it was hers alone. 4 times a year, maximum. You text first, I tell you yes or no, and we meet here, in public, where everything is normal. 4 times a year, Jin-Woo agreed. He extended his hand across the table. Amara looked at it for a moment, then shook it. His grip was warm, careful, a promise made between equals. They finished their coffee talking about small things, the bookstore next door, the weather in Savannah, the customer who came in every morning for grits and eggs. Nothing about Atlanta, nothing about his world, just 2 people sharing an hour. When Jin-Woo finally stood to leave, Amara walked him to the door. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. Thank you, Jin-Woo said, for this, for the chance. Don't make me regret it, Amara replied, but her tone was softer now. I won't. She watched through the window as he walked to his car, got in, and drove away. He didn't look back, didn't linger, just left, respecting her boundaries the way he should have 6 months ago. Amara stood there for another moment, then turned back to her kitchen. Customers needed attention, orders needed filling, life needed living. They weren't friends, exactly, certainly not more, but they were 2 people who understood the value of simple human decency in a complicated world. 2 people who'd learned that some connections were worth protecting precisely by keeping them small, careful, and on their own terms. The debt had transformed into choice. And for the first time since that rainy night in Atlanta, that felt like enough. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. It really helps the channel grow. And comment below where you're watching from. Are you Team Amara or Team Jin-Woo? Or do you think they made the right choice? Let's talk in the comments. See you in the next story.